Thanks for joining me. My name is Mark Lyons. I'm Vice President of Disciplined Agile at the Project Management Institute. And I'm going to give you an overview today of what Disciplined Agile is, where it came from, tell you some details about what's in the content of Disciplined Agile and why it's a useful thing. And I'll also be sharing an overview of some of the things we have planned for Disciplined Agile moving forward. So the agenda would be, what is DA? How can DA help you to become more effective in your organization? I'll do a deeper dive into an aspect of Disciplined Agile called Disciplined Agile Delivery. Also, I'll talk about how it can help you to produce business value. And also then to wrap up, I will give you, as I said, some information regarding where we plan to take DA in the future. So first of all, what is DA? Where did it come from? And back in 2009, Scott Ambler, my co-creator, was the worldwide leader of Agile and Lean at IBM. And it was during that time he recognized that we needed a more industrial strength Scrum. We needed an Agile that was flexible, pragmatic, and appropriate for all sizes and types of initiatives, both large and small. And at that point, we coined something called Disciplined Agile Delivery. And Scott asked for my help with it. And as I say, the rest is history. In 2012, we came out with the first book called Disciplined Agile Delivery. And since 2012, we've worked to improve it over time. In 2014, we added some content about combining the delivery aspects with the release part of it, to therefore coming up with Disciplined DevOps. In 2015, we added content related to all of IT. It's not just about software development teams, but how about everybody else in IT? How can they be agile? We then, in 2017, extended it out to the enterprise. We've added some content in about finance and marketing and project management, product management, and really extending agile to all aspects of the enterprise. 2019, a little over a year ago, Disciplined Agile was acquired by the Project Management Institute. And so Scott and I are thrilled to be part of this not-for-profit organization, which blends really nicely with the agnostic approach that Disciplined Agile brings. So PMI has always been respected for world-class guidance in traditional project management. And now they have world-class guidance on the Agile side. And so it's good to have both in your toolkit, to be able to use traditional approaches where that makes sense, to use Agile approaches where that makes sense, and potentially maybe a hybrid of the two, if that makes sense for you as well. In 2020, what we're doing right now is we're integrating the acquisition that we made of Flex from Net Objectives, owned by Al Shalloway. And Al has created this Flex content that gives us guidance for how we can be more effective in scaling situations. And what we mean by that is if you have a dozen teams working together to produce maybe a new insurance claims application, and you've got in aggregate, maybe it's 200 people. Well, how do you deliver that in an agile fashion? And SAFe provides a guidance, a framework, if you will, to break the big into the small sets of teams, and then maybe release it once a quarter. And that's what SAFe is about. So if you're using SAFe, the Flex guidance that we have combined with the DA toolkit can actually help you to be more effective using SAFe. So that is something that we're working on right now. I'll tell you a bit more about that as we get towards the end of this presentation. Now, so time for a definition. How can we have a presentation without a definition, right? So first of all, Disciplined Agile is a toolkit that provides straightforward guidance that enables us to make better decisions inside our organizations about our way of working. So we used to call it a process decision framework, and we moved away from that term to think of it as a toolkit of literally hundreds of strategies, different life cycles or approaches. It's like Scrum would be one as an example. And you can reference that toolkit to make you better at whatever type of Agile you're currently doing. So I will tell you more about that as we go. Sometimes people have referred to DA as an umbrella over all of Agile. Methods come and go. I'm old enough to remember a method called the Rational Unified Process, or RUP. I used to be an expert in it. I used to teach it when I worked for Rational Software and IBM. But you know what? Very few people actually talk about RUP anymore. And People have moved on to different things, and that's fine as we learn and we learn new different ways of working. A method is really a composition of practices. And as I said, methods will come and go. If you invest in learning the underlying practices, you'll be well positioned to adapt to any method or framework that you're using within an organization. And who you see on the left-hand side, you see Scott, you see myself, and Al Shalloway. Now, we talk about mindset, and there's nothing inconsistent between DA and the Agile Manifesto, by the way. So it is all about Agile, but what we've done is we extended the Agile Manifesto and add some more ideas and content. We break them up into principles, promises, and guidelines. So if I take you through this a bit more detail, in this very short presentation, I don't have time to do a deep dive, so I'm just going to highlight some of my favorites of these. And one of them, of course, is to delight customers. That's why we do this. Be awesome. I'm very passionate about Agile. I've been doing this for over 25 years, and I've seen the dramatic change that it can make within an organization. And I have to say, everybody should be happier if you're doing it right. The team should be happier, your executives should be happier, your middle managers should be happier, and of course, your customers should be happier. And as well, it goes way beyond your Agile teams. It goes up into HR and finance and marketing. They should learn to be Agile as well, and they will be more awesome and they will be happier. And by the way, it's not that hard. You just have to understand your options, understand your different techniques, and customize the techniques for the situation you find yourself in. So we're consistent with that. We believe that context counts. The way you do Agile in a simple website is going to be quite different than if you're writing software for helicopters, as an example. So we need to adjust our approach depending on our context. We're pragmatic, we're not purist, we're agnostic. We believe the choice is good. So Scrum, as an example, is an amazing thing in many, if not most situations. But you know what? In some situations, Scrum's actually an incredibly bad idea. There are better approaches. And what you see within the DA toolkit is we have a collection of different approaches. You pick the one that makes sense for you. And so for those principles, we have promises, and we will create psychological safety and embrace diversity. Diversity makes us stronger. We will work to accelerate the delivery of value realization, and improve predictability. We also have some guidelines to support these principles and promises. Things like, I'm going to pick the number 4 here, create effective environments that foster joy. Don't change the people, change the system that they work in, and then the people will be happier. And then I'll jump to the bottom one, leverage and enhance an organizational assets. A lot of times we find Agile teams try to do everything from scratch. And your organization is very likely doing some pretty awesome stuff. So your Agile teams need to leverage what you already have and recognize that you work within an enterprise situation. It's not just about one Scrum team. So the scope of disciplined Agile, we have at its base level, we have this mindset stuff that I just talked about. And this kind of mindset, Agile mindset content can be extended to all parts of the organization. It's not just about software development. It's really important to have that foundational knowledge. Going up in a layer, we have what we call disciplined DevOps. And that's a combination of the delivery aspect. And remember I said, this is where Disciplined Agile started. It started with Disciplined Agile delivery. For several years, we used to refer to it as that. But that's about how you create high performance teams building, let's say, features. But what use is it if you can build features every day if you ship once a quarter? So what you need DevOps practices to support your delivery. And that's where you see guidance around Agile security, Agile data management, release management support, and IT operationals. It's really important to understand these hexes. It's not a structural. This is not an organizational idea. You don't have to have groups for each of these. It's a placeholder for where you find the guidance, where you find the content on these things. So collectively, Disciplined Agile delivery and this other guidance, this is enterprise DevOps. And moving up into the other areas, we think about value streams and optimizing value streams. And we're going to need to work with these other groups, especially when we start to scale up. And so you're going to want to have Agile portfolio management, maybe some product management and Agile program management, as well as Agile marketing and other things. And then lastly, at the enterprise level, perhaps we want to get Agile in HR, what we call people management. On the far right, maybe Agile finance, Agile vendor management or procurement. And so this message here, this is DA. This is what it's become, is that we've bubbled up the guidance of agility into these other areas with everybody sort of having that agile mindset. More on this a little bit later. So how can DA help me? Well, there's 3 value propositions I want to tell you about. And the very first one is we need to upskill our teams. With the DA toolkit, you can better optimize your agile teams. You learn what's in the toolkit, you're going to be more effective. You have a much larger menu of options to use to customize your way of working. So that's the value proposition here is clearly, if you understand what options are available to you, you're going to have additional tools. And those additional tools will help you to be more successful. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. If you take a 2-day training class and you learn about Scrum or you learn about SAFe, somebody's teaching you, giving you a fish. They're giving you a technique. And what we would say is that if you learn the toolkit, you're actually teaching yourself to fish so that you are much more flexible for different kinds of situations. You're not relying on prescriptive guidance of one particular approach. Value proposition number 2 is the DA toolkit helps you to extend agility beyond the teams up into the entire organization. And that's what I was showing you in the previous slide. That's what real business agility is. Our coaching certification, by the way, teaches coaches how to go and work with other areas of the organization, like release management, like finance, like PMOs, and teach them agile ways of working so that they can be much more supporters of agility rather than some agile teams consider those groups to be impediments. So great news is that the coaching certification we have teaches people how to bubble up that agility throughout the organization. And we have lots of case studies, by the way, and testimonials from companies who've done exactly this, who they've turned their marketing organizations into agile marketing. They've gone and into HR and changed the way they write job descriptions and incenting the way they incent agile teams. All of that can be done, and it's actually not that hard. And it really does result in a truly agile organization. Lastly, the third value proposition of Toolkit is that if you are in scaling situations, like I said, maybe you are using SAFe and you've got 200 developers working on something, the DA Toolkit with the Flex guidance that we acquired together can help you be much more effective with using SAFe. An example of a case study, Barclays, at last count, they had over 1,200 teams around the world. I know I visited their teams in the UK and in Singapore, and they use a variety of approaches at Barclays. It's a worldwide company. They might use they do a little bit of SAFe, not very much, but they do some, and they do less. They do Scrum and Lean, all sorts of things. But what has really helped them is that regardless of approach, they've been able to draw on the toolkit to help them to become more effective, and they've had some outstanding results there. Let me talk a little bit about the discipline agile delivery aspect of DA, that layer that I talked about. So as I said, DAD is about sort of creating high performance engines, teams, and that's why the icon here, you can see it looks like an engine. And by combining techniques of Scrum and other extreme programming and some agile modeling ideas, etc., this is how a team can be really, really effective. So let me tell you how that works. How do you actually use that advice? Well, it's important that teams pick a life cycle that's the appropriate for them. So you can think of Scrum as a type of life cycle. It's like a starter recipe, if you will, to get people started. And Scrum lives inside our Agile life cycle. That's why the icon looks like Scrum. But we didn't call it the Scrum life cycle because it's more than Scrum. You might use some, you might use pair programming from extreme programming as an example. You might do some automated testing, test-driven development. So it's more than Scrum. Collectively, it's Agile. And what's unique about this particular life cycle is that it has sprints or iterations. It's sort of time box based. And we have a continuous delivery flavor of that where you actually deliver at the end of every sprint. We also have a lean approach which does not have iterations. It's much more about flow and pulling work as you have the capability to do it. And we've got an exploratory life cycle for very similar to lean startup, where you're exploring a market, trying to find out what your business really needs before you commit to a large investment. So just think of these as sort of starting points, starter recipes, if you will, as you start to customize your Agile for you. And here's an example of a poster for the Agile lifecycle. And at the heart of it is Scrum, but it's more than Scrum. This is the project flavor of of Scrum, the Agile lifecycle, where you go through a number of sprints before you actually deliver something. You have enough functionality for your stakeholders. Maybe it's a brand new app. You're not going to deliver after the first sprint. You won't have enough functionality. So this is more of a project-based flavor. You have maybe do some upfront planning, very little, because we're trying to be agile here, and we call that inception. You go through construction, a number of sprints, and then you transition, deploy it off. And then maybe you close out the project or you start the next release. But we also have product-based approaches. Here's a lean life cycle, by the way. So this does not have sprints. You pull work. And I'm also going to show you very quickly the continuous delivery version. This is like the Amazon model of lean, where it's not a project mentality, it's a product mentality, and you build, deliver, build, deliver, build, deliver. And if you're an Amazon or Google, you're doing this tens or dozens of times per day. So this is the great thing about DA is you have these different approaches. You pick the one that makes sense for you. We also have governance baked into DA, and this is one of the reasons a lot of organizations really love it, is because there are times in your project or product release that you're going to want to have some conversations with your stakeholders to give them information on the health of the project. How is it going? How is the spend going? Do we need to change our teams up a little bit? Do we need to maybe cancel the project if it turns out we don't need it anymore? Do we need to request more funding? These are typically, if you're using the Agile approach and you have sprints, these discussions would occur on the iteration boundaries, maybe at the same time you're doing a demo. So people really like DA because it has kind of a starter set of governance that you can use out of the box, or you can pick some of these milestones and add them to the ones you have already. But you want to keep it lightweight. You want to keep it agile. Governance does not need to be bureaucratic. Now, within Discipline Agile delivery, we break the guidance up into goals. And what you see here is the goals of Discipline Agile delivery. And I'm going to give you a perspective of how you actually, where the content is. One of the goals is to explore scope. Now, Agile teaches us about user stories, which is great. But I would suggest to you that sometimes we need more than user stories. And so what this shows is other modeling techniques, both diagrammatic as well as textual. So this is how the teams become more effective, because they learn about techniques they probably never even heard of before. An example might be, if I'm exploring the usage of what I'm trying to build, maybe I'll want to use something called personas. And this is from the book, the Choose Your Wild book. You see that we define what a persona is, and then we also talk about trade-offs. And why might personas be useful for us, and where might we use them, the trade-offs? Because you're absolutely not going to do all these requirements modeling techniques, but you might cherry pick the ones based on the type of system that you're building. And personas are a very good tool to help us build better user experiences through having empathy with the people who are going to use our system. So this is how you reference the guidance. In terms of producing value, we can observe that good, successful organizations, like if you look at the FANG companies, the Facebooks, the Amazons, the Apples, the Netflix, the Googles, are they using Scrum by the book? Are they using SAFe by the book, or if they're using SAFe at all? The answer is no. And in my experience with these organizations, they typically have learned to customize their way of working. And it's usually because they have world-class Agile coaches working for them. And I would suggest to you that, hey, you know what? If we invest time in learning the strategies inside the Choose Your Wild book, by the way, and here's a copy of the book, it's 400 pages. That's because there's lots of really interesting Agile ideas that I guarantee, even if you've been doing Agile for 10 years or more, you will learn something from the strategies that are in the book. And so successful organizations take responsibility for their own agility and customize their way of working. Spotify is an example. Don't copy and paste Spotify. But what's great about, because you're not a Swedish online music company, but what's great about Spotify is that's what they did. They customized their way of working for them, their industry. There's some great stuff in Spotify, but cherry pick the pieces that make sense for you, and then cherry pick other pieces from other approaches that make sense for you so that you can create your own way of working. And by the way, it's not that difficult. This is a classic continuous improvement loop, where in a retrospective, you might be saying, we didn't really knock it out of the park. How can we get better? So you identify a problem, you say, well, how should we fix this problem? How can we make sure we deliver our commitments better, because we're just not getting our stuff done? So you identify potential improvements, you try it, you assess it, whether it's working, you adopt it if it does, and you discard it if it doesn't. maybe you share your learnings and round we go. Like I say, this is called a Kaizen Loop. But you know what? These are failed process experiments as we sort of flounder around trying to learn the right way of working. That's often called fail fast. And fail fast is a great idea. Don't get me wrong. If I'm going to fail, let's fail early. Let's learn from it. And then improve. That's our journey to process improvement. So failing fast is a great idea. But how about if we could succeed earlier with fewer failed process experiments? And this is where the DA toolkit can be very useful. Now you can rely on a coach who's been doing Agile for a long time to reduce your failure rate by helping you steer you towards things that might work for your situation. Coaches are expensive, they're hard to find. Don't get me wrong, coaches is very, very valuable. I've been a coach for many, many years. So use coaching, absolutely. In fact, that's why we have a coaching certification. But the novel idea is, what if everybody in the team was kind of like a coach? What if they all learn the techniques in the toolkit so that they can have more effective retrospective discussions themselves? And by the way, pick proven strategies that have worked in similar situations to yours. That will mean you'll fail less. And we call this guided continuous improvement, so that you can learn from the experience of others. Because I know you're unique, but there are certainly people who have experienced similar situations to you, and those proven strategies are in the Choose Your Wow toolkit. So this is what you typically see in process improvement. In adopting a method or a framework, is that your effectiveness tends to level off over the time as you exhaust all the guidance that particular framework or method gives you. But by learning through continuous improvement, you can continue to improve. And by using guided continuous improvement, you can learn even faster. It accelerates your learning journey because, as I said, you have fewer failed process experiments. So the message here is start where you are, do the best that you can in your situation, and always strive to get better. One really important thing to understand about DA, remember I talked about Barclays and they use all these different kinds of methods and frameworks because it's a huge global company. We're not suggesting stop what you're doing. Indeed, it's quite the opposite. You're probably doing some awesome things. So start where you are, but you can always get better. So DA it doesn't displace, it's not disruptive. It's very easy to add it into whatever approach you're currently using. So getting close to wrapping up here, I'm going to talk about some of the things that are coming. I showed you this picture earlier, and this is Discipline Agile. Started with that, just guidance for individual teams. Then we layered in DevOps, and then we extended agility to the rest of the organization. And even though I've been as a consultant, and Scott and the rest of our team, we've been providing guidance to organizations to help them be agile in all these other areas. I talked about HR as an example. A lot of that advice hasn't yet been sort of put into the toolkit and documented and in training programs behind it. So that is what's coming. What you see at the bottom, all that stuff is completely baked. It's being proven. It's being used around the world. But as you get higher up in this square onion, some of the areas we need to add content to. So that's what you're going to see over the next several years is a lot more formalized guidance in the other areas to help you choose your working in HR. Actually, we've got a lot of guidance in HR already. But in vendor management, for instance, we're working on that right now, the procurement ideas, and you're going to see a lot more guidance coming out on each of those. Those hexes, we call them process blades. You're going to see a lot more, you'll be able to double click on all those hexes and get really good detailed guidance in all those areas, but we're not quite there yet. That's what's coming. We are also in the process of integrating the Flex content from Al Shalloway into DA. So this is what you see as this is a new diagram. It shows how we flow value in large scale situations. You may, if you're familiar with SAFe and the SAFe diagram, you'll see that it looks very sort of top down hierarchical. And what Al does with the Flex content is sort of turns it on its side to focus more and more on much more about flowing value. And flow is in the acronym for Flex. So this is what you'll see, and there is a course that we're working on that's almost ready for prime time that Al has been working on regarding how to do that, and that kind of takes me to this. And what you're going to see very soon is a DA Flex playbook along with the supporting workshop for how to improve SAFe. The DA transformation playbook is also something we're working on right now, but you don't need to wait. Scott and I wrote a book, an executive guide to Disciplined Agile, where we kind of share our crown jewels. It shows how we have a transformation roadmap, chapter 7, that shows you how you do some training and then you incrementally adopt different flavors of Agile, educate in different groups, etc. But so that we wrote that book, and what we're going to do is add in some of the newer DA content. We're going to add in some of the flex content and really give you a much more robust DA transformation playbook. So that's coming. And then the certification program, there by the time, well, you're going to see improvements to the certification over time. You'll see that we've improved our Scrum Master certification, and you're going to see additional certifications coming related to the other process blades. Might call them micro certs. So if you're in marketing, then you can learn the Agile mindset stuff and then layer in some guidance for how to be Agile in marketing, so that you'll see that coming. So in summary, I apologize for the quick pace here. There's so much content that I'd love to share with you, but we have got so little time. But to summarize, success doesn't come from adopting a prescriptive framework or methodology such as Scrum or SAFe, but it can be a great place to start. So, and if you're doing Scrum, don't stop doing Scrum. There's no intention to stop doing Scrum, but it's also nice to learn about other techniques such as Lean. We do see a lot of Scrum teams actually move towards more of a Lean approach. But if you're quite happy with Scrum and it's working for you, then don't change. But I guarantee that if you learn the toolkit, you'll find other things out there that are going to help you make your Scrum implementations more successful. And for true business agility, we need to choose our own Agile way of working. We need to optimize for a unique situation. We need to take responsibility for adopting or for evolving our own way of working. All the companies that you admire or fear are doing this. So you don't get competitive by copying somebody else because they're doing XYZ framework. You get competitive and you beat them by maybe starting with XYZ framework, but then evolving to a much more Agile flavor. DA is a rich, comprehensive, and well-organized toolkit of strategies to help your organization be more successful with Agile. In fact, some people ask me, Mark, this sounds kind of cool. Who does DA compete with? And I would suggest to you, actually nobody. The reason is nobody else has done this. Nobody else has, because everybody seems to have an agenda. It's like XYZ method is the best thing and you guys should do it. Or 1, 2, 3 framework is the best thing ever and you guys should do it. We're agnostic. And nobody else has kind of pulled the stuff together into this very rich library with context-specific guidance in one place. And so, don't take our word for it, talk to Gartner. Gartner knows all about DA and they're a big fan of this agnostic toolkit. So DA does bring this disciplined, agnostic, pragmatic, professional enterprise approach to Agile, which is what our industry has been lacking in the past. I'm kind of on a mission, and then this is one of the key reasons why we're so happy to be part of PMI. Scott and I, as part of PMI, are on a mission to raise the bar. Like really, to be a PMP, you have to understand a significant body of knowledge, pass a difficult test, have thousands of hours of real world experience before you get your designation, which is why it's the most respected traditional project management designation in the world. Well, we're missing that on the Agile. The people take a 2-day cert. Often you don't need any experience. Sometimes there's no test. And then the PMOs are like, okay, it's an Agile approach, and they trust a multi-million-dollar initiative to somebody who doesn't really have any experience. And it's no wonder that things go wrong. We need to raise the bar. We need to invest more in self-education so that we can, it kind of takes me to my last point here, is that if you understand what your options are, you're going to be far more skilled than somebody who's just taken a 2-day course. And you'll learn strategies you never even heard of before, and you're going to become more effective. So you'll make better decisions, and better decisions lead to better outcomes. You'll definitely become much more successful, and that has been proven. Okay, so if you want more information, go to pmi.org. Lots of information about DA there. There's testimonials, there's case studies. There's the books. And by the way, if you are a member of PMI, you can get access to the book, the PDF version of the book for free as a member benefit. So certainly check out PMI for more information. There's a very good certification program, as you might expect. And thank you for listening. If you're interested in following me, I'm at Mark_Lyons, and you can go to pmi.org/discipline agile for more information. So there's your whirlwind tour of what DA is, past, present, and a little bit about the future. I hope that you'll look into it. And thank you for listening.